Hi, and I'm Judy Sarden, and I am here with Amber O'Neil Johnston. And Amber is actually probably my BFF, uh, my best friend ever. And she also is a homeschooling mom of four. So she's going to talk to you today about starting a homeschool group and what motivated her and how she got it done, the ups and downs, and all that stuff. But I also want you to know that Amber is a business owner as well. Amber runs a business out of her home with her four children. And it's one of the things that people are always asking me about, can I work when I'm homeschooling? Can I run a business while I'm homeschooling? The answer is yes. Amber is proof of it. How long have you been homeschooling, Amber?
Let's see, this is my fifth year.
Fifth year, and her business was, she already had established her business, but she's continued to run that business through her homeschooling. So it is doable, and we'll let her talk about that at the end. But right now, Amber, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Okay. I'm married to Scott. We have four children, as you said. It's girl, girl, boy, boy. Almost 10-year-old girl, fourth grade, third grade, 8-year-old girl, a 6-year-old first grader, and a preschooler boy. And so we are in the suburbs of Atlanta, kind of doing our thing out here.
Awesome. And so, Amber, before you became a homeschooling mom, and actually before you were a business owner, what is your background, your working background? It used to
Okay.
be in corporate America, right?
Yes. So I went to grad school. I have an MBA, and I worked in marketing and brand management for several different companies, eventually landing at Georgia Pacific here in Atlanta, but worked with Sara Lee apparel in the past, and worked on infant formula marketing, apparel, and paper. So in the midst of that, somewhat early in my career, I had hired a personal trainer because after grad school, I felt like I was really out of shape and wanting to kind of get back into a healthy place. And while working with her, I discovered a passion for exercise. I never knew I had that because I'm not good at team sports. I was never good at them. And so I thought I just wasn't athletic. And through working with her, I realized that I actually really am. I loved lifting weights. I loved cardio. Kickboxing and all these things. So I became a personal trainer on the side, but I was working in corporate America and marketing along the whole time.
Wow. And then, so that passion led into?
Okay. And then I started a business on the side. So I was like, oh, I'm a personal trainer now. I want to work with clients, but I still have a job. So I would work with a client in the morning and maybe right after work. And then I moved to Atlanta. At the time I was living in a smaller town in North Carolina, and it was easy to drive all around town. I moved to Atlanta and I was like, oh, so there's a thing. I can't drive all around town here. And so people were starting to get their word out and asking me to train them. And I'm like, so it's going to take me an hour and a half to get to your house at 5:30 p.m. So I can't do it. And I was like, I'm leaving all this money on the table. This is ridiculous. People are coming to me for a service I can't provide, but surely there's something there. And so I decided to kind of become a middleman. And so the next time somebody asked me to come train them that I couldn't come, I said, I can't, but I have somebody who can. And she said, okay, that's great. If you can send her on this date or whatever. I didn't have anybody. So back then it was all about Craigslist. I'm sure I'd find people a different way now, Facebook or something. I put an ad on Craigslist and interviewed people at the Whole Foods in the little eating section and brought on a couple of contractors. And so I started, as I would get clients reaching out for trainers, if I couldn't do it myself, I would send one of them. And I would, the client pays me and I pay the trainer a percentage of that. And that's what I still do today. We've expanded into now it's personal training, yoga, and nutrition. And I ended up going back to school as an adult, as a mother. It was crazy. I don't know what I was thinking. And I got a degree in nutrition and dietetics. So that's
And that you did that while you were homeschooling at that time. Two kids?
Yes.
You had two babies. You had two babies at that time, right?
So I was homeschooling too, and then I had an infant.
Oh,
I don't know what I was
doing. But here you are. So you started homeschooling. And so what led you on your journey to start homeschooling?
So I'd met or heard about it a little bit in Atlanta here and there, but I never felt like it was something that I could do. It was just something nice that other people did. And I, kind of admired their families, but never personalized it as an option for myself. And then at the time I was working on my dietetics degree, so my husband had the kids a lot. He was at the park and he came home and he's like, oh, I met this lady at the park and she homeschools her kids and I'm so impressed. And here I got her phone number. You should call her. And I'm like, like, I don't need you to like coordinate my friendship for me. That's so weird. And I'm so uncomfortable. Like, no, I'm not going to call this woman. And so I was kind of annoyed about it. So a couple more times he came home and told me at the same park, he met the same woman. So now I'm thinking, maybe I need to go to the park and meet this woman. So he's meeting my husband. So I went one day with him and I met this lovely woman and she was homeschooling her lovely children. And I started talking to her because my husband made me. And I later found out that she wouldn't have said anything to me either, probably. And so he forced us to talk and we hit it off really well. And that person was you. So
you're going to make me tear up.
I know. It was it's really an incredible story. I've told it so many times, but I basically shared with you that, that had a little bit of interest, but had already put in my deposit for the private kindergarten. And, I wasn't trying to lose my $500. And I also felt like I didn't want my kids to, I wanted my kids to have everything and to be able to do anything. And I was lacking confidence. And so I remember you're a big fan of the Socratic method. And yes. I remember you asking some strategic questions. And one of them, I remember leading the whole conversation led to a point where you were saying, so if I hear you correctly, you're saying that the teacher with her 20 to 30 children, having never met your child before, would be best equipped to teach your daughter. And you feel that you would be unable to kind of handle kindergarten education. And I was like, yeah, no, I think I can do it. Now that you put it that way. So you invited me over to your house and I got to see kind of what you were doing and how you were doing it. And, having that one-on-one mentor for, that period of time, it gave me confidence and kind of a kickstart in a how-to direction. So which was invaluable. And so then my kind of inkling of wanting to homeschool turned into something where I feel like it was all about confidence. I felt like I had the confidence at that point to do it.
So I just did an interview with Mary Jo Dean with Great Homeschool Conventions, and she talked about how she lacked the confidence. And I talked to a lot of women who say they lack the confidence because they only, and I say that with air quotes, have a high school diploma. Mm-hmm. But you had your MBA, you're working on yet another degree, you're working on degree number 3, you'd had corporate experience, corporate success, yet you felt you still lack the confidence. Why do you think that is?
Because I wasn't a teacher. So I had other degrees and other experience, but I had not been taught how to teach. And I also was fearful that there would be some magic thing that the kids needed to know that I wasn't aware of, and then my kids would be left behind. Mm-hmm. And so there was just a fear that it felt like, well, if they're in school, there's like a magic checklist that I'm not privy to, that the school knows about, and they'll make sure that my kids get all those things in the checklist. And so now when I say it, it sounds silly, but it was very real to me at that time. So, and I came from, both of my parents were public school principals. So I grew up in a system that seemed to me to be full of experts, and I wasn't one of them.
So you went ahead and made the leap because kindergarten, it's kindergarten. Yeah. And so that was with your first baby. And then at that time you had your oldest and you had one right behind her. Yeah. And then you had your infant. And so you did it and decided.
So I was like, I'll try it for a year and see, because I can't really mess this up too badly. I always put her in school next year. And then during the course of that year, I fell in love. And I was like, oh, that's it. I'm done. It's a wrap. Because, I feel bad talking about it. Sometimes I feel like I'm like going to oversell it. It definitely has its cons, and I have bad days and all that, like we do in every aspect of life. but it made my heart sing. So I had always been a stay-at-home mom, and so I had always desired to spend that time with the children and be their primary caretaker and be their primary, influence. And then when I saw the relationship with my two girls, the sisters, and the way they interacted and played and were together, and then, little things, traveling off season, saving money.
Yes.
Love to travel and being able to just pick up and take, trips where we could at affordable rates. And, when grandparents who are my kids' grandparents all live very far away, when grandma came to town, the kids were with her the whole time because we weren't doing school on those days.
Right.
And being able to integrate, experiential learning, I guess we call it field trips, but that was just such a huge part of what we were doing, and seeing the kids' growth and my enjoyment and my husband being involved. And it was everything. When the kids got sick, it was okay. There was no stress. It's like, hey, take it easy, relax. I got it. Here's some, soup and a hug and some snuggles. And then on days when it's freezing cold and no one wants to step out, we're doing what would be considered multiple days of school all in a day. So it was like our own natural pacing. And I think it just, I don't know, when I say it made my heart sing, it just felt like this is what I was supposed to be doing.
So you homeschool for a while, and I know that because both of us have made our rounds of the co-ops, the groups.
Yeah.
And so tell us about your experience initially kind of joining groups before you even thought about creating one for yourself.
Okay. So I knew that I needed support. And I wanted to be a part of a group to do things with and spend time with people. And I joined a group initially that I'm still a member of. It's a great group. And there were no issues for me. But my daughter, my oldest daughter, started to say some crazy things. So she started exhibiting signs of really early on of being hyper aware of race, although she wouldn't have known that, color of people's skin. And she started saying things that were concerning, like not wanting to play with her black dolls, hiding them in the closet, saying that they were ugly, always asking me before we went somewhere, are there going to be any other brown girls there? I don't want to go if they're not.
Oh, and just for clarification, if you're listening to the audio, Amber is African American.
Okay.
So that's why this is an issue.
Yeah. And she's saying, I remember being at a museum and she came running over to me crying. She was taking a little class and I was sitting in the back, and the instructor at the museum had instructed the children to color a picture of self-portrait of them as a princess. And she came over crying because she said she drew a picture and the little girl next to her told her, you can't be a princess because your hair is in braids. Your hair is braided. Mm-hmm. And so then it became an everlasting hatred of her hair. And it was just one thing after another. And I started thinking, and she would always ask me, why am I the only one with a brown mom? And I'm thinking to myself, you're a brown kid, but for her, she saw nobody else. And I was like, this is a real problem. And so I started looking, for other opportunities, not instead of the group where we were the only Black family, but in addition to. And I couldn't find anything local, but I found some groups that were farther away and maybe not so much horrible mileage, but with Atlanta traffic, it was like an hour plus. Mm-hmm. And so I joined one of them and it was great. I remember crying the first night that I went to one of their support meetings. They got around the circle to me and asked me my name and I started bawling. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm crazy. But I was like, this is it. This is what my little girl needs, to be able to see a room full of mommies that look like her mommy and a room full of girls with braids that look like her. But the hour plus drive, mm-hmm. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't, I couldn't be consistent with it. And so while we would do things with the group, there was no way to build a relationship and community mm-hmm. because I'm not going to drive an hour and a half to go to the park for an hour.
Right.
And that's where things started to break down a little bit for me.
So it's one of the things that I'm always telling my coaching clients is community is so important. And, I'm a member of several groups. and for several reasons. I'm a member of one group because it's mostly boys around my son's age. And, I'm a member of another group for different reasons. And so community doesn't necessarily, like you said, you're a member of multiple groups as well, even though you
Yeah.
have your own. And so
Yeah.
community is, it transcends just having people who look like us. I think it also includes people who share values or people who have some kind of similarities. So, so you went around to the group, you found one, but it was way too far away.
Yeah.
And so now you're stuck again.
Yeah. Well, in that aspect, and at the same time, like you, I'm joining other groups. And again, I'm still members of those groups. So we're in a nature group where we do outdoor nature exploration, and that fulfills a purpose. And that's it's like more of an affinity group, right? Based on a hobby or an interest we have. And so we're in that group as well. And I'm in a group of other Christian homeschool parents, and that fulfills an aspect of who I feel like we are and what our homeschool represents. So I am, you described it perfectly. I'm a huge proponent of probably going to have a quilt of groups. There might not be, it probably won't be this one group that's going to do everything that you feel like you need. And I'm very, I'm thankful for that. Atlanta, we have a lot of options, and I like to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there was this one aspect though, and that was that my kid needed to see other people like her.
Right, because where you live is predominantly white, and your church is predominantly white. So really, there was really no other area in your life where she was regularly seeing people who look like her.
Right. I mean, as much as I could tell, homeschool world where we lived was completely white. I knew you, and that was it.
And what's really, and this actually speaks to parents. I've talked to a lot of parents, white parents who have adopted Black, American or African children. And they're always asking about this particular aspect of whether they're being told they should put their kids in public school so that they can be around people that, I see your expression, so that their kids can be around people that look like them. And I always tell them, no, that is not the only reason why you put your kids in public school. And so you're having even though you're African American, even though you're Black, you're having the same issues that a transracial adoption family would have.
Absolutely. And I mean, now on the other side of this, I've been encouraging people to not just wait for your child to exhibit problems, because every child's not going to do that. My oldest, she's very vocal, she's spunky, she's demanding, she's going to say what she needs and how she feels. But, my second daughter, she never said a peep.
Right.
And I never said a peep, which is more important. So I grew up, and I was, I lived in a neighborhood, it was all white, K through 12, never had a Black teacher. Usually never had any Black people in my class. And I was like, well, I'm fine. So I expected my kids to be fine.
Sure.
I was happy. I had lots of friends, and I didn't feel depressed or upset about my life. But now on the other side of it, that now that I know more and have better vocabulary and can be more in touch with the little girl that I realized that I wasn't always fine, but I didn't know that it could be different. And sometimes I couldn't recognize what I was feeling inside. And it took me to be this far away from it to look back through a different lens to be able to see that I actually wasn't fine. And so, I guess I would just say that I've talked to some parents like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that story about your daughter, but my kids are fine, and they're always the only ones and everything. And I'm like, and they may be, because who am I to tell you what your kids are feeling? But just know that I was that super fine, perky, happy kid. But now I realize I really wasn't. And it caused issues for me later that didn't manifest in childhood.
So after the hour-plus drive away didn't work out, what was your thought process about, what am I going to do?
So, okay, lots of late nights, conversations with the hubby, sleepless nights. We considered a lot of things, to tell you the truth. We talked about moving to parts of Atlanta. I mean, it is Atlanta, for goodness sake. We were like, how could we be in Atlanta and be, want for black people? So we thought about moving to a different area, but that was going to kill my husband's commute for work. And then I really wasn't going to have a husband, right? I'd see him on the weekends only. That didn't seem like a good idea for me or for the children. And we talked about moving churches to a predominantly Black church. And we did, try and dabble in that for a little while. And it was fine. One thing I learned from that is my girl was all about it. My daughter was like those little old ladies that were giving her mints in the hallway. Oh, baby, come over here. I got a mint in my purse for you. And the teenage girls picking her up and playing with her hair and loving on her. I started to see a flower that had started to wilt. She became alive again. And so I knew that I was headed in the right direction. But, we had been at our predominantly white church for years and years and had developed very close friendships there. So it was a very confusing period for me because I was like, what are we really seeking after? And ultimately, when I choose a church, that's not what I wanted to choose it based on. We were already deeply rooted in a church that was seeking after what we felt was important. So we were like, so we were going to both churches, basically is what was happening. We were doing early service at one church, and then we were driving and catching the later service at another. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we did that for a long time. So we were like, Black people, Black people, Black people. All right, let's go worship the way we want to worship, and we were like, okay, there's got to be a better way. And so I started thinking, I had it in my head, like, I probably am going to have to start a group. But I'm like, but I don't want to. I thought of it, it's like starting a business, and birthing a business is hard. Yeah. It's time consuming. It's a labor of love. And I was like, I don't want to do something hard right now. I just had a baby. I had another baby at this point. And I was like, I don't want to do something hard. But I just said, if this is what I want, it's not here. No one else is doing it. I've been waiting for someone else to do it. You weren't doing it. Come on, Judy, do it. You have passions elsewhere. And so I was like, okay, if it's to be done and this is what I want for my kids, I'm going to have to make it happen. And so I knew I needed to start a group close to home.
So I remember, you and I would always run into each other at the park. And actually at that point, I think we were living in a pretty relatively diverse area for North Atlanta. Neither of us does now, but you and I would always run into each other at the park, and but we kind of thought we were the only ones, right? Yeah. We didn't know that anyone else was out there. So you kind of were in a position of, if I build it, hopefully they will come.
Yes. And I remember distinctly telling Scott, he asked me, he's like, what's your sign for success? Like, how will you feel successful? And I said, if I can get 5 other families to come alongside us and kind of do life with us and spend time together, build community, I think that will be great. So I was aiming for 5.
And so now this was 3 years ago?
Yeah.
October?
Yeah.
And so at your largest, we're going to just jump ahead and then we'll come back. At the largest, how many families have you had in the 3 years? Because I know people ebb and flow because circumstances change, but at the largest, how many families did you have?
So we ended last school year at 92 families.
So you went from, I will be happy if I can just have 5.
Right.
And at your largest, you've had 92 families. And I always tell people the amazing thing about it is most of the families, I know, especially when you first started, folks might not know I'm an introvert. When I'm at the events, I don't really talk to people, but a lot of people don't even know Amber and I are friends. But
hilarious.
But when you oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. But when you initially started it, most of the people who started didn't even know that the other people were there, and it's in the same county.
Yes. I mean, to this day, I still don't understand how it happened, because now that I see all these families, I feel like when I was growing up, there was this cartoon called Thundercats. And
yes,
when
I remember it.
Okay. When one of them was in trouble, they would like shine this light up in the sky, and there'd be like a Thundercat symbol, and they go, Thundercats, 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 ho! And they would all see it and they'd join in and they'd fight the bad guys. So I feel like I shined that light up into the sky, like Black homeschoolers in our county, and people saw it and came flocking. And I'm like, whoa, where are you guys? What? You live here? You've been homeschooling, some of you, for longer than me? And where have you been? And so they're telling me, oh yeah, when we go to such and such museum, I'm like, we're members there. We were there all the time. I never saw you. So I think it was just a lot of ships passing in the night. And
Yep.
then it just so happens that, you know, people that aren't familiar with where we live, our county is huge. And so it's very, very, very spread out, and Atlanta traffic is really bad.
Yep.
And so even though we might be in the same county as someone, and sometimes even in the same town, at opposite ends of the town, you could be 30 minutes and higher, 30 to 60 minutes still away from that person in traffic. And so we just were kind of in our little micro geographies in a lot of ways. And then, you know, I think we were all kind of doing different things. We are not a monolithic group of people. And so we are all Black, but we're all very different. So somebody's kids might've been deep into music, while somebody else was deep in sports, and someone else was really doing a lot of, you know, writing and poetry and liberal arts things. And so we weren't necessarily all at the same places at the same time.
Yes. And so because you and I have had discussions about this, it's kind of like your affinity groups that you were talking about. You're a member of the hiking group. You guys have that in common, that you like to be out in nature.
Yeah.
And so that's what you come to the group for. And the same thing with the Black homeschooling group. You know, I love that my daughter can, and, you know, I have an issue with doing hair, and my daughter's hair is usually looking quite crazy, but you know, there are other kids, there are other girls there too. And it's like she's there with other girls who look like her, their hair is like hers. And hair is huge in the African-American community, if you don't know that. And so just being around other kids that look like them, and also with my son. And I know you share the same things with your son. I don't know what it is about African-American boys or kids in general. Their play is very physical. They run, they love to run, they love to run. And so in this group, they can run and play tag and rough and tumble all day, and nobody's looking at them crazy. If you can share some of your experience, because you've talked mostly about your daughter.
Yeah.
But share some of your experiences about your son as well.
So my boy is a climb rocks and boulders, hit things with sticks, yell in the woods type of a dude. And so there are times where I was feeling like in every environment, it was like, shh, be quiet, put that down, stop doing this, don't do that, don't go there, be quiet, don't pick that up, don't do that. And I started feeling like, man, I'm on this kid. He can never be himself. He can never do what it is he wants to do, because I was so stressed, one, about him just being calm, but then also about people not looking at him and feeling like or looking at him and seeing this like wild little Black boy. And a lot of that, I admit, was probably my hang up, but a lot of it's also legitimate. And so having a place where I could put him out, you know, let him out on a longer leash. And now I just feel comfortable, like everybody knows him and he's out there, and I'm watching my boy be free. And I mean, he's still, he can't wield sticks and stuff at the playground, but a lot of times we're out in the woods, and I think the woods is a place where boys can hit things with sticks. So watching the freedom that he has and the freedom that I feel to allow my kids to just be more free. And on the other hand, sometimes my kids are naughty. They do naughty things sometimes, as kids do. But in this group, there is a certain amount of freedom where I know that when other mothers see my kid, they're like, oh, she's having a rough day. And that's all that it is. Versus there's something wrong with her, or these Johnson kids are always misbehaving and everything like that. There's just a feeling of family and feeling relaxed, a feeling, an extra layer of comfort and acceptance and understanding. And yeah, I mean, I also role models. I mean, I started the group because of the kids. It was all about the kids. It was not about anything that I needed, because I didn't need anything. I was good. I was like, I have friends, I'm fine. Now, since then, I realized once again, like, wow, I've met all of these dynamic women that I wouldn't have otherwise met. And it's been wonderful, but I love that benefit, but that wasn't what drove me to do it. But now also the kids seeing all these brown parents and, you know, the dads coming and, you know, and the moms and being able to talk and have these role models that look like them. And our parents are remarkable. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's not a kind of average person in the group. I mean, they're just all very talented and dynamic. And for my children to be able to be exposed to them, I was driving long and far and hard to get my kids in front of, dynamic Black people for a long time. And now
Mm-hmm.
it's right around the corner.
So I know that, so let's just talk about the mechanics of how you
Okay.
started it. So I know, because that's another question. So it'll be helpful so that people know exactly what you did. I know I think you started off at on meetups, or were you going to someone else's meetups?
Okay, no. So I started out day one, I had 3 things in place. So it took me about, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks. So people don't think I'm crazy, but it took about a week, but I was staying up till like 3:00 in the morning, most days that week. And I built the website. So I used a website template. It's like homeschool-life.com. And they basically, their business is creating websites for homeschool groups. And so you just sign up and you can make certain selections. It's kind of like using WordPress. If anybody's ever used that for a blog, like I'm not using HTML, I'm not programming anything, but I'm making choices to make the website look like mine. And you type in all the words, you add all the copy. So it took me a while to get all that set up. And then I set up a Facebook group and I set up a Meetup page. And I did all those 3 at the same time and got those locked and loaded before I ever told anybody about the group. And I had another mom, Kayla, that was helping me as well. So we would bounce things. I would bounce things off her and she would give me feedback. And, I'd talk to you, got your thoughts on a couple of things. And that's kind of what I had in place the day I'll say we went live.
Okay. So with the Facebook group, because I know with the homeschool thing, you have to pay for that once you start adding families. So because a lot of the groups that we're members of it's just a Facebook group. So
Right.
From a Facebook group perspective, how easy was that to set up, and what did you have to do to get the Facebook group set up?
Okay. I am like horrible at Facebook, and it was really easy. I just had to get one other person in the group to make the group official. I think I put my sister in there because I was like, I wasn't sure what it's going to look like or whatever. And I just put a brief description of the group, and the whole main purpose of the Facebook group at that time was to point people to the website. So this group, and that's one of the things, decisions people have to make when starting a group. I wanted this group to be first and foremost about community. So it's not a field trip group. It's not a park play date group where anybody can come and the more the merrier. It's a group of people who have kind of committed to doing this thing together. And so for that reason, I wanted to force people into the website where it's password protected. So you have to have a password to be an official member to have access to our full calendar. And so the Facebook group was really easy to set up. And I don't remember, I put a few things out there. I seeded a few events and then always just communicated, pointing people back to the website, which is ultimately what I wanted people to sign up on the website.
So your vision, I'm glad you mentioned that. So because most of the other groups that I think we're in are field trip groups or park play date groups.
Right.
And so you were, in fact, trying to build a community, and the community is important, especially for homeschooling kids, because you want to build a vehicle where they're seeing the same kids every day so they can build the friendships, or not every day, but they're regularly seeing the same families, the same friends. Because that's the one aspect that they miss by not going to school every day. So that is what your goal was for
that particular group. And I think there's merit in both models, because I'm in other groups. I would call it informal groups, right? So you have these Facebook groups and people join, and informally people are opening up their events for people to come pick and choose what you want to come to and all that. And I'm in those groups and I like it. So I think there's merit in that. But that just wasn't what my vision was for this group. So for this group, I didn't need anybody else to go on field trips with. I didn't need anybody else to take a class with. I had all that. I had groups to do. I didn't need people to go hiking with me because I had that. What I needed was friendship and camaraderie. And in order for that to be built, I knew, because I had been part of these other groups, you go and a lot of times there's different people every time.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
always fun, and there's always
Yes.
homeschoolers there, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
And I wanted the same people. And the only way to get the same people that I knew of quickly was to put some money on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're actually paying to be a part of something that you're going to repeatedly kind of commit to coming to, not on a set schedule, but with a set group of people. And that's where we kind of, and then I've maintained that same vision throughout the whole time.
So do you, I know that you have the members Facebook group that's still active. Are you still doing the Meetup at all?
No, I closed the Meetup down just because the Meetup is a little bit pricey, but it was worth it for me as a marketing investment in starting starting the business. It feels like a business. Starting the unpaid business. And so because we did get a flood of members over time from Meetup, but once we got to a point, I got way past my 5 initial groups.
Yes.
I didn't feel it was worth, like, I don't need to pay to get people anymore, because now we're big enough that there's a lot of word of mouth, and Facebook is good enough. And Meetup then became pricey in my head. It was a great investment in the beginning. It wasn't overpriced, but then later I was like, why am I paying this? I don't need it anymore. The other thing about Meetup is, because we're a private members only group, the whole point of Meetup is you have to post meetups. Mm-hmm. And so how I was having a hard time figuring out what to put on Meetup, because we don't want to just put it out there for the public. You have to be a member to get the password to get to the calendar. And so what I was having to do was have kind of like 2 strains of events, like the real events, and then pluck and pick some of those to put on Meetup. And so I felt like Meetup wasn't necessarily giving people a full vision of who we were, because they might go and see like 2 events a month, when in reality we might have had 12 events that month.
So, okay. So if someone is like, a lot of times I'll talk to people who are in rural areas, and actually I've I remember when I was in Texas, for sure, people were always saying, Black families are always saying, we wish we could find other Black families. So if you have, because I would imagine that the process is the same, whether you want to put together an affinity group, any kind of affinity group, because I think I would consider this is kind of affinity group plus, because of the way you run yours.
Yeah.
But if I'm just some person, I'm out here, I think I'm the only person out here, what would you suggest they do in order to get started, in order to put the feelers out, in order to put up that sword and say Thundercats ho? What would you recommend that they do so that they can start trying to connect with other people?
Okay, so I would say a few things. One is, a low-hanging fruit is to start a Facebook group. Call your Facebook group, you can change the name of it later, but don't call it Cutie Calicos, because nobody's searching for Cutie Calicos. You may be your dream name for your group, but make it a non-cute name that really describes what it is. So it's a homeschool hiking club for Winnesett County. I don't know, and whatever it is that you want to do. And I would try to pick something that you have a vision for your group. You can always expand later, but you can't be everything to everyone. So like my hiking group or my nature group, that's our thing. So we're not a museum field trip group. Now, when we made friendships, I've been to the museum with some of them, but that's not what our group is about. And so if you're going to be a general support group, define what that means. So for my support group, like, we don't do weekly co-op classes where they meet every Tuesday or whatever, but I say everything outside of the academics, but we do occasional classes. So anyway, I had a list of these are the things we're going to do. And we've changed it a little bit somewhat here and there, but I would just say pick something, a niche. It doesn't have to be super narrow, but something. And then use that to describe your group on Facebook, so that when people are searching for that type of thing, your group will come up, or be more likely to come up. So you get your group, your Facebook group, put some posts up there. And I am by no means a social media expert. I'm sure there's something much better you could do. And then at the beginning, I would leave it like open or easy for people to get into, not a secret group or anything. And then join other groups where people who would come to your group would also hang out on Facebook, and ask the moderator of those groups if you can post about it, or if there are no rules against it, post about your group. Try to make it relevant and not spam people, because then they'll just think you're annoying. And so I posted for my group first. There was a broader group of Black homeschoolers that was a very loose group in Atlanta. It wasn't an actual group. It was just a Facebook only thing. And I posted on there, hey, if you guys are in Cobb County where I live, I just started a new group, an in-person group where we're going to get together for things. And I posted it there, and that led to a flood of people coming over. And then, like I said, Meetup. But another thing that has really helped me is I got those free business cards on Vistaprint, or they weren't free. They were cheap though. They weren't free. I think I had to pay shipping or something. And so I had business cards, and it has the name of my group, the Facebook address, the website address, my phone number, and my email. And I would start giving them to people when I would be out in public. Like if I was at the grocery store in the middle of the day and I'm like, those kids don't look sick, and I bet you that they're homeschoolers, and I would just be like, hey, ask me, do you homeschool? And 90% of the time the person says yes, and I'm like, bam, here's a card. Like, I'd love, to connect with you. Or if I was at a field trip or a museum or something like that, I just started handing out these cards. So having those always with me, because that's not like I'm going to remember to bring them. I would just always leave them in my bag. And so that really helped as well. And then as a few members joined, I gave them each a stack of cards, and they started handing them out to people that they thought would be interested too. So.
Okay. So that's good stuff. Because I think that it's just one of the things that you have said, and I've used this over and over again, is that when your child is struggling, or when your child needs something that you don't think that you have to be intentional. And so one of the things that people have asked me is, what do I do if my kid needs this, but I don't know anybody? Or what would you say to the mom who, like your child was suffering, and at first you couldn't figure out what to do, especially with the Atlanta traffic and driving on the other side of town?
Yeah.
So what would you say to that mom? It doesn't matter what it is, whether you're Black in a predominantly white area, whatever, because we all have stuff we need, but we don't have.
I think for me, I was highly motivated by, I remember being in bed one night asleep, and I'm a very, very light sleeper, and I felt a presence, and I opened my eyes, and my daughter was standing on the side of my bed crying. And she was crying, and I was like, what? It's like 3:00 in the morning. I'm like, what is wrong? What's up? I was sitting up, did you have a bad dream or whatever? And she just said, I just don't like myself. Oh. And so I was like, okay, so I don't know if whatever anybody told me that needed to be done that day, I was going to do it. And so I'm going to be tired. I had a newborn. I don't care. I will figure it out. I will seek it out. I will find it. I will hunt it down until I get it, and I will deliver it to her on a platter in a wrapped package forever and ever and ever. I'll do it every day. And so I was like, I know. It was gut wrenching. And so that's what motivated me against all odds. I didn't need to do this. Like I said, I had a newborn. I just had a fourth baby. I'm already running a business. I don't have any family here at all. So I don't have a great uncle or a single cousin. My family 12 hours away, my family and my in-laws in two different states. So no support system and all of that. But that right there at 3:00 in the morning, I was like, I'll figure it out. So I think that if it's important to the point where you've decided that this is something that your child or your family cannot do without, whatever it is, that there are ways for it to be done. So if I was, blessed enough to be in the Atlanta area where I was able to put out that beacon, but I know some people really are in rural areas and really aren't. I'd be starting an online group with video, right? Because there's a visual there for my needs that was important. If it wasn't that, then if it was hiking and you didn't have anybody to hike with, I'd be starting an online video hiking thing where the kids all come back and report about what they found on their hike that day and bring something to show on the video in the little Zoom chat with their other friends. I would start a pen pal program. And each time, and the parents, yeah, you're going to have to invest a few bucks, and they're going to mail their little finding of the week, you know, and with their favorite recipe, because you're starting a cooking club online. I mean, I don't know. You can do anything with free video chat now, but to be able to fulfill the passions and needs, if it's an emptiness or just a yearning for your children, there is a way to do it, even if you aren't in a place where the actual physical people are there. That's always a preference, but it might not be. What if you're overseas, wherever you are? If there's something that you could do, that you could do something to help your child's heart.
That's awesome, Amber. You are my inspiration, because I can barely cut it with these two that I have, and I love watching you with those four. I love it. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for talking to us. And if you want to tell us the name of your business, if you're in the Atlanta area or anything like that, or the name of your group also, if you're in the Atlanta area.
So my business is cafephysique.com. So I send personal trainers, yoga, Pilates instructors, and dietitians, mostly to people's homes. And we do work in businesses and hotels. And the group is heritagehomeschoolers.org. And I blog at heritagemom.com.
Awesome. And you also have recently took a 3-month, I don't know what you call it, world schooling trip to Bolivia.
Yeah.
And you wrote about that on your blog.
Yeah. And we're planning a trip, so there'll be more stuff coming soon. So
awesome. So if people are out there and they're interested in world schooling, especially if you're going to Bolivia, check out Amber's website where she wrote about it while she was there, and keep a lookout for her next adventure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.